Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So, I hope you're all well. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name's Vicky Marie. I am based in Spain, in Europe, and I talk about true crime, and we have quite a lot of chats. I welcome your input. If you want to leave comments, please go ahead. Just be respectful, of course, to everybody. I don't think I need to say that to most of my chatters. Most of my chatters are very respectful. Opinions, everybody's got one, and you can have your opinions, but you do have to be respectful in how you frame them, I think. Anyway, I think we're going to probably be united in this video. Sometimes we talk about crimes and people have different opinions in what might have happened. Definitely with this, with the Gilgo Beach murders, Rex Heuermann, he's just pled guilty. So I don't think anybody will be, sticking up for him, that's for sure. There's a little bit of, some people think, did his wife know anything about it, or his family? I personally don't think they did, but some people think that. I think the police would have arrested them if they thought they did. Yeah, some of their DNA was found on some of the things to do with the victims. Well, they all lived in the same house, so I think that's inevitable, really. But anyway, yeah, sometimes we disagree about things, but you know what? We can disagree about things without falling out, can't we? Now then, so what we're going to talk about in this case, so of course Rex, I'm still showing his picture because he's not been sentenced yet. I don't think, has he been sentenced? Anyway, this is Rex Heuermann. He's pled guilty. He hasn't been found guilty. He's waived his right to a trial. He's pled guilty to the murder of these 8 women, young women, over quite a long time span. So he joins the sort of illustrious, not quite, list of serial killers. He is a serial killer. And part of the conditions for accepting his guilty plea is he has to cooperate with the FBI, give them information about his motives. I mean, I don't know what sort of things the FBI will be asking him. And he's agreed to do that, to cooperate with the FBI. Maybe he can help catch other serial killers. He can certainly help the FBI understand profiling more, be more accurate with profiling. Only a serial killer knows how a serial killer's mind works. Rex Heuermann, he was one of those typical serial killers, a suburban husband, with children, good job, architect. Maybe he wasn't the most popular guy in the street, but nobody thought that even though he committed a lot of his crimes in his own home, nobody suspected him. Not only his wife, his daughter, his stepson. And when he married, I think her name's, is it Asa, or she already had a son who was special needs. Rex took that boy on and brought him up as his own son. I think I've got a photo of them somewhere. Probably people sort of applauded him for that. There's his wife now, his daughter, and his stepson. So they're sort of secondary victims, aren't they? I mean, the main victims, of course, are the women that were murdered by him. And these are 8. There's definitely more. I mean, he was operating for a long, long time. And that's part of what we're going to talk about. He could have been caught so much more quickly. And the reason he wasn't caught more quickly is because of botches in the investigation. And this is where I'm going to be drawing parallels as well, the Nancy Guthrie case, because the sort of the person who was in charge of, dealing with this case. He didn't like the FBI, wouldn't cooperate with the FBI because he was under investigation by the FBI. And then finally, he actually ended up arrested himself. And even at one point, people wondered if that detective was actually the Gilgo Beach sort of serial killer. And it just reminds me so much of Sheriff Nanos in the Nancy Guthrie case. And this case of Rex Heuermann finally broke when they got rid of him, got in somebody good to run this investigation. And that's when it all changed and Rex ended up being arrested, get him off the streets, make America safer than before. I mean, there'll still be other serial killers out there, of course, but he's not out there. Now, we don't know when he exactly started serial killing. We don't know when he exactly stopped serial killing. All we know about these 8 women that he's confessed to murdering by strangulation, most of them, I think. And he hid their bodies, he dismembered their bodies. He had an interest in violent porn. He's a sadist, but at the same time as he was doing all that, he was married. And a successful architect in Manhattan. Maybe people thought he had I don't know what people thought of him. I've not heard any of his friends speak or whatever. Maybe they thought he had a bit of a strange personality, but they certainly never thought he was capable of what he ended up. Now we know that he is capable of. And the more details that come out about him, the more disturbing the whole thing becomes. Because now we're finding he wrote of every time after he'd done a kill and then he was preparing for the next one, he would write a list of what he had to remember to do next time, to improve on the time before. He was learning. This is what serial killers do. Their first kill is normally a little bit botched, but if they're lucky to get away with that one, then their next one is a bit better. They practice, they improve with practice, just like you would with any hobby, I suppose, or anything you do. You do it the first time, maybe you don't do it so well. I don't know if you paint a picture or you play tennis or whatever your hobby is. This is like a hobby to them. It really is. It's something they do for pleasure in their spare time. They enjoy it. It's not, it's not a chore, it's a pleasure. And each time they do it, they get a bit better. And Rex Heuermann was writing notes, to-do lists, to remember for next time. Hit harder in the face. Remember these, the products he had to buy for these clear-up efforts. We're going to have a look at that, the list that he made. It's chilling. So just like shopping lists, like you write your shopping list, or maybe you write to-do lists. I do. I love crossing things off my list. Like, so it comes maybe to the weekend or any day. I don't do it as much now as I used to, but I tend to write lists and have a list of what I want to achieve in a day. And you might end up with quite a few things on that list and you may not get them all done. But it's so satisfying, when you cross them off, like, I don't know, sweep and mop the stairs. They're never anything very interesting. Take the dogs for a walk, or what other things might be? Like things, what I write on lists are things that are not just part normally of the normal day, to be honest. It's things that, I'm trying to think what the last list, what it might be things that I have to buy, put in the car, or put air in the tires, things that are perhaps a little bit different to what you normally do, daily routine. I write it down, something so satisfying, isn't there, about crossing it off that you've actually done it. Also, Rex obviously thought that as well. Now, Rex, his birthday is the 13th of September. He's a Virgo. Virgos are known for being precise about things, but they're funny because he lived in an absolute shithole, didn't he? You wouldn't say that his house was all clean and perfect and orderly, but as far as his actual crimes were concerned, he was precise. And I suppose as an architect, you have to be precise, don't you, with something. So he's an interesting character. And I hope that him talking to the FBI will help. It can't help these poor girls that are already gone from this world, but hopefully maybe it can help future cases. And of course, the aim of the FBI, there's always going to be people who are going to go out there and kill. But if they can catch serial killers after the first kill, or second, it used to be years ago in the 70s, serial killers would just go on killing ad infinitum because they were difficult to catch, because they would travel around, especially in America, they would travel around states. They would change their identity. There was no DNA then, not like it is today where it's so advanced. There was no, the data tracking of mobiles and stuff like that. So I think now, well, I know because I've been looking into it. The 70s was often called the golden age of serial killers, and it makes you wonder, why did Rex stop killing, or if he did, was it when the Gilgo 4 were found? When those 4 girls were found on the beach, and he realized that because up to then nobody had found a body. Nobody knew that there was a serial killer out there. There had already been a couple of bodies found, but they hadn't been linked together. It was when the Gilgo 4 were found on the beach there at Long Island, because the police were searching for Shannon Gilbert. That's when they had a serial killer on their hands. I wonder if he stopped then because he realized maybe things were getting too, he's an astute man. Often they can't stop, can they? Because it's just in their DNA almost. But he was getting older. I mean, he's 62 now. He's got physical some illnesses, etc. Or whatever comes of being older like that. And he's sorry, it's whirring. Yeah, maybe it was just as he got older and he wasn't as physically fit as he was that he stopped. No, hopefully that's something that he will it and why he stopped. And are there any other victims? So we're going to be talking about that. So first of all, I want to thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please leave your DNA on the like button and on the subscribe button and on the notification button so you get any updates on any cases that we're dealing with. Of course, the main case, been to the Nancy Guthrie case. There's still no official news there, but I am going to be discussing it a bit in this video because, as I say, there's some similarities between the investigation of Rex Heuermann. He could have been caught so much more quickly if there would have been somebody good in charge of the investigation. Luckily, in the end, they did put somebody good in charge of the investigation. But for a long, long time, it was completely bungled. And not only that, the corruption in the police force and the DA and everything. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So I can see similarities there with Nancy Guthrie. They need to get rid of Sheriff Nanos. He's not going to go voluntarily because I think he's covering up a lot there. He's not going to let somebody just march in to his office and find out what he's been up to. I don't trust him one little bit. I think he is used his office for his own gain. And he'll go in the end, but he'll go when he's pushed and when he's ready. And he doesn't like the FBI because the FBI have been investigating him. And that was the same in the Gilgo Beach murders. So it's an interesting parallel, isn't it? So yeah, I want to say a very special thank you to those of you who've bought me a Ko-fi to help with my computer fund. Still not quite there yet. If you want to buy me a coffee, that would be brilliant. Those of you who've sent super stickers, those of you who are members, thank you so much to those of you who are members. Thank you to those of you who have sent emails or all sorts of ways for me towards this computer fund. Thank you to those of you who send me nice emails, leave nice comments, and contribute positively to my channel. Appreciate it so much. Anyway, here we are. It's fun, and the weather's not too clever here in Spain again. It's been raining today, but it's not cold. That's the main thing. And today has been one of those funny, so far, I mean, it's only the morning. It's been one of those funny days, where lots of little things go wrong. So but they are literally little insignificant things, sort of just frustrating, isn't it? So first thing I want to say as well to you all, I hope you're looking after yourself. I hope you're looking after yourself. Have you had your breakfast, if it's morning time, of course? Have you taken your medication, if you're on any? Don't forget to take some time out for you. I think it's so important, and I think a lot of us just don't do it. But if you're especially if you're looking out for other people, because there's things going on maybe in your life, that you're having to be the strong one, you're having to be the rock, and sometimes you don't feel like being the rock. You want someone to look after you. Make sure you do take time out to look after yourself. Have a pedicure, a manicure, a massage. Just, I don't know, sit and watch some rubbish on the telly that you don't have to think about. Try and switch off. Play a game of Spider Solitaire. That's something I like doing when I get a chance. And the other reason I just want to say this, and I normally say it at the end, but I want to say it at the beginning because people don't always watch right through to the end of the videos. So I've been watching a lot of these romance scam videos, and it's just so obvious that the men and women, but mainly the women, that get taken in by these scammers who are so cruel. When you think about how cruel they really are cruel people, playing on people's vulnerabilities, getting them to send them money. But what is sort of clicked with me is the reason why people put up with it and find it really hard to accept that these scammers are not real is because they ask about them, and they come over like they care about them. A lot of the people that get live with other people, but they're lonely. You can be lonely even if you're living in a house with 3 other people. If you've got nobody to talk to, or you feel like you're not appreciated. And these scammers, that's how they do it, isn't it? They make these people feel appreciated. They tell them they love them. They say, oh, you look lovely today, or have you had your breakfast? Have you done this? Have you done that? Oh, I was thinking about you, blah, 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 blah. And, so the people that are being scammed, they find that really hard to let go of then. When they find out that they're being scammed, or all the evidence is put in front of them, often they still will not accept it because they've lost. Sometimes it goes on for years. There was one at 4 years, one I was watching the other day. I'd been, being scammed by this person who didn't exist, who was some person from Nigeria, because they're nearly always from Ghana or Nigeria, unfortunately. I mean, if I was Nigerian, I'd be bloody annoyed about that, because as soon as people say Nigeria, people just think, oh, scammers, online scammers. But of course, there are lots of people in Nigeria that are not online scammers. But yeah, they're so cruel. But the thing is, these people are so vulnerable because they're lonely, they feel unloved, they feel unwanted, and these scammers make them feel loved and they make them feel wanted. And they're very clever at it. So make sure you don't have to rely on somebody else to make you feel loved or wanted, although it feels nice. Nothing feels nice. Someone saying, you look lovely, and but these are things that make us feel good when people compliment or say nice things to us or seem to care about us. But you've got to try, you don't need somebody else to make you feel good. You can feel good. That's why it's important. Otherwise, it's something. I didn't say that. Hello, lovely lurkers. So nice to see you. You're looking lovely. How's your breath? I thought you look an agency, like just doing that, make people feel good. You got these scammers, they scam people out of thousands. It wouldn't have that much. Just the cost of setting it up. Sending people nice messages every day, there is a market there, definitely. But for people who genuinely care about people's welfare. Anyway, hi to Replay Crew. Thank you for watching. And let's see. I think there was somebody in the chat earlier. Hi, Lily. Hello. I hope you're well. So, right, let's get going with this story. So the first thing I just want to look at. Hi, Mark. How the police chief, delayed the capture of this horrible man. So the other thing I was thinking, this is where my mind goes, most people, I'm thinking about serial killers as I'm driving. Last night I was thinking, God, in this moment, how many serial killers are out there killing someone? It's horrible. Now, there's much fewer serial killers these days because, as I say, they tend to get caught quite quickly. Which is a good thing. Data tracking, etc., are not as successful as they were. Anyway, that's probably taken. Isn't it? Have you noticed that? Whenever an advert comes up, it's always Temu. I will never order from Temu again after it took bloody weeks for my thing to arrive last time. So, this is an article from the New York Post. Read it to you because it does explain what I'm trying to talk about. How the police chief, how many of these women might not have been. How many of them may not have been murdered? It says if only people had paid more attention to Long Island-based crime writer Robert Banfelder, the 80-year-old author could have told anyone who listened years ago that the Suffolk County DA and the cops in charge of the Gilgo Beach serial killer investigation were bungling the case. They failed miserably. They thwarted everyone who was trying to help the investigation, especially the FBI. These are bad dudes who botched the case. So, as I say, at one point it was even thought that the detective in charge of the case might have been the serial killer himself because he was so dodgy. But he didn't want to cooperate with the FBI because the FBI was investigating him. So, last week, Rex Heuermann was charged with 3 counts each of first and second degree. This is from when he was charged. I'm not going to read that out because we know now that he's pled guilty. So it was these 3 women originally he was charged with, and they were all discovered in the marshes along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo State Park in December 2010. And originally he was pleading not guilty, but he's pled guilty now, of course. So these are the Gilgo 4. These were the 4 ladies that were first found when the police were looking for Shannon Gilbert. And that's how this, and then eventually it got linked with 2 other, eventually there's 4 other women, isn't it, that he's been accused or he's pled guilty to killing. So why did it take so long for him to be caught? 11 years, I think it was. And there was a lot of speculation about various people. But this is the person. This is the DA here. This is the former Suffolk County DA, Thomas Spoter. He was as corrupt as anything. Seen here at his 2017 arraignment, he's serving a 5-year prison sentence. He'll be out now for helping to cover up former Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke's beating of a man who stole sex toys from Burke's car. So right now, you won't believe it. I mean, it's like talk about the truth being stranger than fiction. So he's the DA. He tried to cover it up. This is the police chief here. He's the one who had a bag stolen from his car, which contained a load of sex toys. So while he was in charge of the Gilgo Beach investigation, blocking all attempts by the FBI to help out because the FBI were investigating him, he had this bag stolen from his car and it had a load of sex toys in it. And then you got accused of beating the guy who stole it. So, it's a right confusing mess. Bit like with Sheriff Nanos. I'm not saying Sheriff Nanos has got a bag of sex toys in his car. I don't know. But I do think that Sheriff Nanos, he doesn't like the FBI because the FBI have investigated him. So, what did he get? He's out now, I think, this guy. He got prison, but I think he's out now. So apparently the county executive of Suffolk County, Steve Baloney, was accused of bungling the Gilgo case because apparently he'd been warned about this guy's past and his character prior to hiring him. So he's got this checkered past. He's got, dodgy associates, and he was put in charge of this very important investigation. Now, I do think at the time, because these girls were all sex workers, I don't think it was taken seriously or seriously enough. And to put someone like him, he's supposed to use sex workers as well. He's notorious for that. And they put him in charge of it. So what this author is saying, that he hired a bad cop to investigate a serial killer. So not long after being appointed chief of police in 2011, he removed the FBI from the Gilgo murder investigations because he knew he was also being investigated for assaulting the thief who stole his sex toys. I mean, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I mean, just if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. It's one of those, isn't it? So Burke never wanted us involved in this serial killer case because he knew we were investigating him, said a federal source. Banfelder, because of his affinity for true crime, said he was well aware of what he called the corruption surrounding Burke, Spota, and McPartland. They all go well back, they all go way back. So these were the people that were investigating, and that's why this guy was not found for 11 years until there was a change of leadership in the case. If anything needs a change of leadership, any case, Nancy Guthrie's case. I think the similarities here. You know, when a sheriff will not work with the FBI, you'd think he'd be grateful for the help of the FBI. You're trying to solve a high profile let's add this. Oh, hang on. Sorry, you can see it now, I think. Let me show you. So this is the police chief when he was arrested. This is the police chief. This is the DA who appointed him and is supposed to be corrupt, the same. And that's the police chief, James Burke. So, yeah, you know, years ago, oh, what does it say? So he's what this guy is saying, this author, or was saying, because this was a few years ago, this article, if it wouldn't have been for the fact that it was so badly dealt with, you know, that this guy would not cooperate with the FBI, that removed the FBI from the case. So that's what I'm saying, is that if you were a police chief or a sheriff or whatever, and the FBI is offering to help, even Donald Trump said, you know, take whatever help you need. You know, Kash Patel was involved. You know, you take that help because the FBI are, you know, they are the creme de la creme, aren't they, as far as things like that are concerned, as murder investigations. They've got the laboratories, they've got all the different tools that they've got to find killers. Why would you remove them from a case unless you were as sketchy as anything? And here, of course, is the guy himself. So yeah, he's so this is what this guy says anyway. It's not only him. I mean, he was arrested and he did serve prison time, but I think he's out now. So could this man have been found so much earlier, and how many women's lives might it have saved? Or maybe he didn't kill anybody again after the Gilgo 4 were found. Because maybe he realised that he'd been cottoned on to, not him, but, you know, that they'd realised there was a serial killer at large. And maybe he wouldn't have, you know, time will tell whether he killed anybody afterwards. But at the end of the day, the whole inquiry was botched. So the Post first reported in 2016, and there have been similar accounts recently, that Burke would attend parties with rugs and prostitutes in Oak Beach, not far from Gilgo Beach, according to John Ray, an attorney for victims Shannon Gilbert and Jessica Taylor. Ray also represented a prostitute who claimed a relationship with Burke, and per a separate source. But of course, Burke denied that relationship. So we're talking about a guy who's been put in charge of a case of a serial killer of prostitutes, a guy who uses rugs, has a bag of sex toys in his car for some unknown reason. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having sex toys, but what's he carrying the bag around in his car for? And then he supposedly beat up the guy who stole it out of his car. And of course, that's how the story got leaked. So, you know, he's a bad actor, a bad person. But he was put in charge of this case. you know. So I just wanted to draw attention to that because I do think that this is a similar thing. This is thank you, Lily. This is a similar thing to what's happening in the Nancy Guthrie case. As I say, I'm not saying that Nanos has got a bag of sex toys in his car. I have no idea what he has in that weird car that he drives. It's like, he's got one of those sports cars, hasn't he? Just a lot of, men who've got open, they have cars like that. I mean, he's in his 70s, for God's sake. Anyway, I'm not saying, as I say, that he has parties with drugs and prostitutes. What I'm saying is, I do think him not cooperating with the FBI is a red flag. I think it's a massive red flag. And I do think it's holding up the investigation. Now, 11 years it took to catch Rex Heuermann. Is it going to take 11 years to find out what happened to Nancy Guthrie? I hope not. I hope not. Anyway, the next thing I just wanted to talk about is serial killers in general. As I say, the 1970s was the golden age of the serial killer. They were killing with impunity, going from state to state. Murders weren't getting linked together, were they? You've got like Bundy, of course, the classic one, Ed Kemper. You've got John Wayne Gacy. Then there's the list is endless. From the 70s, you've got the Hillside Stranglers. You've got Jeffrey Dahmer. Serial killers were literally getting away with murder, weren't they? Now, I don't know that would happen now. Hopefully they get caught before they really, because once they start, they're not going to stop until they do get caught, or until they die, or some sort of physical infirmity stops them. They're never going to stop voluntarily, are they? So anyway, if we look at so what it says on, let me just swap this over and get rid of that. I need to put that window down. So according to AI, the 1970s was a peak era for serial murder in the US, with nearly 300 active serial killers. Key figures were Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Edmund Kemper, David Berkowitz, and other active killers included Dean Corrill, Rodney Alcala, I'd forgotten about him, the dating game killer, Robert Hansen. I want to do a video about Robert Hansen, actually. I will be doing one about him soon. Dennis Rader, Bind, Torture, Kill. So these criminals targeted victims due to limited forensic technology and police communication. So we had a lot of active killers in the 1970s. Nowadays, we don't, it's not thought to have so many. Of course, the thing is, you just don't know, because serial killers have to be, murders have to be linked together, don't they? To discover whether you've got a serial killer or not. Murders have to be. And then there was Israel Keyes. He wasn't in the 70s. He wasn't that long ago, really. But he was caught relatively early on. So yeah, it's whereas nowadays, according to Wikipedia, let's have a look where it says. So the dog's trying to get out of the bedroom upstairs. It's quite worrying. She can't get out, I don't think. But looking at this, see, these are these are worldwide serial killers, though, not just in America. Because don't forget, I mean, serial killers. There are all sorts of walks of life that they come from. Most of them, lead a normal life as well. Most of them have wives, families, etc. So this is a list of serial killers who were active between 2020 and the present. And some people, there are still some serial killers that haven't been identified yet. So, every time they catch a serial killer, it's a result. So in 2020, you can see there's quite a lot all over the world. Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, Czech Republic, Soviet Union. I don't think we've had one in the UK for quite a long time, have we? Can't see any on here that are from the UK. Spain does just serial killers hardly exist in Spain, even in history. I don't know why that is. Personally, I think it's because the Spanish society is more sort of family orientated and united. I don't know. I mean, to be a successful serial killer, you've got to have somewhere to take your victims, unless you kill, that's why a lot of them choose prostitutes, I suppose, because they can just do it in the car, or often it's lorries or stuff like that. But really, if you need a place where you can take your victims, where you're not going to be disturbed, that's private, then you need somewhere where you can dispose of the body. And so it tends to be a more it's difficult to dispose of a body in a place like the UK, because the UK is such a small country and the CCTV footage everywhere. You'd be struggling to get away with it there. But when you come to places like Canada, USA, Russia, I suppose, is, places where there's huge expanses of wilderness, it's much easier to dispose of bodies without being seen, isn't it, or caught on camera, etc. But even though nowadays it's still harder, even in those kind of countries. So it's harder to be a serial killer nowadays. But look at all these. Most of them are in the United States, aren't they? They just love a serial. Sorry if you're American there watching. What is it about America and serial killers? There's loads of them. Anyway, we've got other countries though. We've got Turkey, South Africa, Greece, Canada. There's quite a lot, but most of them are the United States, aren't they? What's that about? What is that about? What's that? Nigeria, one in Nigeria, Argentina, Indonesia, Colombia, Rwanda, Russia, Chile, etc., Thailand. And Vietnam, only one though. Do you know Mexico, couple in Mexico? Definitely the most common country for serial killers is America. And I don't know what the reason is for that. What do you think? But the good news is they're getting fewer and far between, because nowadays, they get caught so much earlier on, don't they? So quite often they'll only kill one person and they get caught because of DNA or because of triangulate. Look at Brian Koberger and the Idaho. He was definitely a fledgling serial killer, wasn't he? A serial killer in the making. He would have gone on, if he wouldn't have been caught, I'm sure 100% he would have gone on and killed. Because serial killers, they do it for the fun of it. They like doing it. It's almost a compulsion, really, because they're not doing it for the motive of money. Like other murders, people, it might be a money motive, or child custody is a big reason why people often murder their exes and that, or divorce, separation. People don't want a divorce, or they don't want their partner to have a new partner. All those. These are not those kind of killings. These serial killers, they do it because they enjoy it. They like it. It's not about money or anything like that. It's just literally for fun. It is like a hobby. And these victims are nothing to them. And what's sort of amazing as well, that always intrigues, quite often, they've got family else, and they're good, they're described as good parents or a good husband or a good wife. Rare, there's not many female serial killers, or not that we know about. Really, people always bring up Eileen Wuornos, but she's a whole different kettle of fish for normal serial killing and what they do. So they normally get some sex gratification out of it, and then they just move on to the next one, and they never think about those. They don't think of those victims as like their own wife or their sister or their children. They're not theirs, so they don't count. They don't count. Their lives don't count because it's not their family. It's terrible, really. And they don't ever feel remorse, really, because they're incapable of it. They can put it on, pretend they're sorry, but really they're not sorry. It's like, sorry, not sorry. And if they got the opportunity to do it again, they would do it again, because it is a compulsion in them. And once they start, there's no stopping them. So it's interesting with Rex Heuermann. What I would like to know about him is, did he stop killing after those 4 were found on Gilgo Beach? Because, it all got a bit too, once he realised that, it had been realised that there was a serial killer, did he think, he was going to get caught any minute? And then what must he have thought, looking, because in his house they found sort of details, didn't they? He'd been keeping news clippings and things like that about the Gilgo Beach. He must have been following the case quite closely to see if, he had anything to worry about. And maybe he stopped then, because they must have a little bit of a degree of control over what they do. Like Dennis Rader, Bind, Torture, Kill, he stopped killing for quite a long time, and they thought he was dead, and then he just suddenly started again. And I think he was busy with his family, is what he said, wasn't it? And they must, I don't know. And then you've got some serial killers like Russell Williams, the Canadian colonel. He supposedly did until he was his 50s. I don't believe that. I think I can't believe that at 50 odd years old, he suddenly woke up one morning and thought he was going to go off and kill a girl, a woman, stalker. And then I think he must have done things when he was younger. Maybe he got away with those, or maybe because he was in the services, maybe, the services do attract serial killers, because if you've got a penchant for killing people, what better than to join the army and then be able to legitimately kill people, to actually maybe even get decorated for killing people. There's a big case in Australia at the moment of a guy who's supposedly their most decorated war veteran, war hero, and he's now being charged with murdering people, because war, it's this funny thing, isn't it? There's legitimate targets, which of course the soldiers on the other side, I suppose, and sit down willy-nilly murdering civilians. So yeah, that's a big case in Australia at the moment. I might cover that actually one day. Australia's most decorated war hero, and now he's been charged with murder of civilians. I think it's in Afghanistan. So, the services obviously do attract people who are violent, because it's hard to kill someone, even if you're a service person. To raise your gun and kill someone who you don't even know just for the hell of it, even though, well, you think you're doing it for your country or whatever, but it's hard to kill anyone, isn't it? I don't know. I would find it. In fact, I think you know, it's different if somebody was directly threatening you or your family, you know, that self-defense is one thing, but to actually join the services and to go out there. I mean, I'm glad, you know, we need the services, of course we do, to protect our peoples and that. And, you know, we haven't really, you know, especially nowadays against, you know, some of the horrible people out there like Netanyahu. Um, you know, it's a real, what's the word? You know, it's that again is something that I think about a lot, and I think, you know, what would you do, what would it take for you to kill somebody? Um, you know, to protect your loved ones. You know, would you be able to do it? Anyway, it's not easy, is it? To put it that if you've got any sort of conscience, unless you actually enjoy, it'd be quite difficult, even if you were a soldier or you know, or in the service of some kind. And it leaves a trauma. You know, it leaves a trauma. You might think, oh yeah, it'd be fine, but you know, a lot of people come out of the services with PTSD, don't they, and trauma from things they've seen and experienced. So you know, it's not easy, is it? It's not in our. It's not natural for us to want to kill people. I don't think. I don't think it is a natural thing. Self-defense is one thing, but to actually go and kill someone, this you must be wired wrong. Especially someone like Rex Heuermann. So let's remember, he planned meticulously to kill these poor girls. He deliberately picked small stature girls. Uh, and, you know, a lot of people are wondering why he did that. You know, did he just find them more attractive, you know, a petite girl? But I think it's probably likely they're just easier to subdue. You know, he's a bloody massive big ogre of a man. And if he picks on a girl who's not even 5 foot, she's not going to be able to put up much of a fight. You can just probably sit on her, you know, and subdue her that way. So that's likely why he chose petite women. Ed Kemper was another one who chose petite women. Again, I don't know if it was for that. He's another massive guy. He was like 6'9", I think. You know, so easy to subdue. Just these little girls, you know, they weren't little girls as in children. I mean, little, you know, petite, like these petite girls. Ted Bundy had his type. They weren't necessarily petite, but they all had like dark hair parted in the centre, didn't they? That was he supposedly reminded him of his ex-girlfriend. So most of his victims, at least that we know of, had a similar look. The Green River Killer, I don't think he had a type. They were just sex workers. And he's never really explained why he did it. I don't think he thought of them as real people. You know, a lot of people don't think of sex workers as real people. And as I say, they'll go home then to their wives, or they've got sisters or mothers or daughters, and they treat them really nicely and well and everything. And in the meantime, they're killing these other girls because they don't matter. They don't mean anything. It's awful, isn't it? Okay, now we're going to watch a video now. Hopefully, hopefully it'll work. This is, see if I've got any other windows that I can put down. Yeah, this is it Crime Network? One of those, Law and Crime Network. Actually, I must like that video. So this is a short video telling us about the Gilgo Beach, about the to-do notes that he made. So he would write these lists. So he would write these lists about what to remember for the next time. You know, when he was preparing for his next crime, he would write a list, how to improve, what to do next time. Right, let me just share it now. So this is Crime Fix on the Law and Crime Network. And I thought it was a very interesting video. We're going to watch it together, hopefully. So you got, let me know if make sure that the sound comes through. I'll just add it to the stage. Okay. Right, I just need to press play now.
How old are you? 62. You read and write English? Yes.
A mystery that gripped a nation, and now, for the first time, the accused killer speaks, and the truth is more disturbing than imagined.
Are you pleading guilty voluntarily of your own free will? Yes.
A deal, a promise, and now the Gilgo Beach killer's wife, Anjanette Levy, and this Crime Fix. You know, before we get into this incredibly horrific case about the Gilgo Beach serial killings, I want to tell you about an app that I've been using that I really like. It's called Upside. And Upside will get you cash back on things you buy every day, like gas, groceries, and takeout. Here's what you need to do. That bonus on every gallon. This case, of course, dates back to the early 1990s. It's absolutely horrific. And before I get into Rex Heuermann's guilty plea, let's talk about the victims and a little background on how we got to this day. All of the women had similarities. They were petite, attractive, and some of them had worked as sex workers. Detectives on Long Island believe their murders were the work of one person, dubbed the Long Island serial killer. All of these.
Now, can you hear it okay? Just let me know, is the sound coming through? Yeah, okay. Good, thank you, Lily. So here's Rex. A few years ago now, on a previous video, ages ago, we watched, he was interviewed, wasn't he, by a guy about his being an architect and all this kind of thing. And this is him taking a selfie. Oh my God. It's just intriguing, isn't it? I think at the end of the day, serial killers, they are intriguing because you cannot, to me, I always just imagine these people having their normal conversations, getting home from work. Hi, I'm home, chatting to their wife, chatting to their daughter, going, just living their normal lives. And all the time they've got this terrible secret inside them. It's unbelievable, isn't it, really?
Women had families who loved them, but all 8 had crossed paths with a monster who'd used them and discarded them like trash, some of them along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. 4 of the women became known as the Gilgo Four. Maureen Brainerd Barnes disappeared in 2007. Melissa Bartholomew vanished in 2009. Megan Waterman and Amber Costello were killed the next year in 2010. All of the women's remains were discovered in December 2010 along Gilgo Beach. They were wrapped in burlap. A court document described how Maureen Brainerd Barnes' lower body was bound with a belt. The buckle had the initials WH, which investigators believed could have been the initials of Rex Heuermann's father, William Heuermann.
Now, I just want to say as well, again, without Shannon Gilbert going missing and the police started searching that area for Shannon Gilbert, would these women have ever been found? And the thing is, although, we've got all this DNA nowadays and stuff like that, which means that serial killers probably get caught quicker. The problem is you've got to find the bodies first. How long would these women have laid there and, their bodies, nobody even knew those bodies were there. So you've got to find a body first before you can start doing the DNA testing and, all the other bits of things that we could do these days with the new technology. But it all starts, until bodies are found. And the problem with these girls is because of their jobs, because of being SEX workers, some of them weren't missed or not missed quickly enough, or they were reported missing and the police didn't take it seriously because they were sex workers. So yeah, although I think we can stop serial killers so much more quickly now, you still have to, you know, find a body first, you know, report someone missing, find the body, then start the testing, then link it maybe to other killings. But I know it's better now, but of course it's not perfect, is it? It just makes you wonder if these girls would ever have been found if it wasn't for Shannon going missing.
April 2011. Partial remains that were later identified as Valerie Max were also found along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. Years earlier, in November of 2000, hunters had found some of Max's remains in black trash bags, her torso, legs, and arms bound with rope. For years, she was only known as Jane Doe number 6 until DNA testing revealed her name. It would take nearly 13 years amid missteps in the investigation, but the monster targeting the women would be identified through DNA and cell phone technology as Rex Heuermann. Heuermann was an architect who lived in Massapequa Park on Long Island, but commuted to Manhattan each day for work. He lived in a small home that had once been owned by his parents. Prosecutors said they used DNA collected from pizza crust that he'd tossed in the trash to link him to hairs collected from some of the victims. Other hairs came back to his daughter and wife. Despite that, Heuermann said that he was innocent. After Heuermann was charged in the murders of the Gilgo Four, the investigation didn't end.
So yeah, don't forget that from the beginning, when he was first caught, he declared he was innocent. His wife stood by him, you know, and this is why people now still say, "Oh well, she must have known something." She stood by him because she probably couldn't believe it. I mean, I think they've been married sort of years and years and years, you know, brought up children together, and just lived this sort of normal life. So she stood by him because I think that'd be quite common for a lot of, until she knew the evidence. You know, I just think if you've been married to someone for all that length of time and suddenly the SWAT team turns up at your door and then they start searching your house, and, you know, any of you that are out there with husbands or partners, and they have their man caves, don't they? You know, they have a place where they tend to go, do you know everything that's in there? You know, it's probably better not to look in a way, but, you know, not every man will have, like, the things that Rex Heuermann had hidden in his man cave. But, you know, probably a lot of men maybe got some pornography there, or, I don't know, you know, things that maybe they don't want finding. Sometimes if you start searching for things, you find things you don't really want to see. Like if you start looking at someone's phone, it's not always a good idea. I always think that if you feel like tempted to look at their phone, there's a reason for that. So you're going to find something, because otherwise, why would you even want to, you know, you would trust someone. Whatever precipitates you to think, oh, they've left their phone there, I'm going to have a look at it. I think you're going to find something, because otherwise, if you had nothing to work, but then people can be still in denial. They can find messages that makes it clear someone's having an affair with somebody else, or maybe they're visiting PORN sites or dating sites. And, you know, denial is a massive thing. It's like a mental illness. It's like with those scammers that I was talking about. What always amazes me about the scammer videos is these women, they believe everything their scammer tells them. You know, when they're telling them, oh, yeah, I'm stuck at the airport, I need $10,000 to pay this thing. And they go, oh, yeah, okay, darling. And they send them $10,000. Then when the person who's finding out the information for them and exposing the scammer goes to them and says, oh, this is what the evidence that we've found, they don't believe them. It's just because people believe what they want to believe. And I would expect when all this fact first came out, that wife of Rex Heuermann, she wanted to believe he was innocent. He'll have been saying to her, yeah, I'm innocent, blah, 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 blah. She wanted to believe he was innocent. So she did. And then when it became clear that he wasn't, and then of course he must. I wonder if he just sat her down one day and said, "Look, I am not innocent." Remember when Richard Allen tried to do that with his wife and she wouldn't accept it? That is the strength of denial. Even when the truth is right there in front of you, slapped right up in front of you, a lot of people can't accept it.
And the work of the grand jury continued. The remains of other women had been found not just along Gilgo Beach, but in other locations in Manorville. And in June of 2024, the grand jury indicted Rex Heuermann for the 2003 murder of Jessica Taylor and the 1993 murder of Sandra Costilla. Taylor's skull, hands, and forearm were found along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, in the same area where the Gilgo 4 had been found about a mile down the road. Her remaining body parts had been found years earlier in 2003, and parts of her body had been mutilated in Manorville. A single hair had been found in a drape in which she had been wrapped. In November 1993, 2 hunters found Sandra Costilla's body in North Sea. The bail application for Heuermann stated that Costilla was laying on her back with her arms stretched out over her head, and she had multiple stab wounds on her face, breasts, thighs, and genital area. In June of 2024, DA Ray Tierney revealed DNA results that he said,
I mean, he's a real monster. What he did to these girls, what they would have gone through. You know, it's just terrifying, isn't it, to think of? And then he's gonna know, you know, his wife, because his wife, she wasn't there. His wife and his family weren't there when these things happened. But then when they came back, he just, oh, hi, oh, what have you been up to? Well, we've been gone. Oh, it's been boring. It's been boring. You can just, you know, imagine the conversation. Oh, yeah, I've been, you know, raping and torturing and murdering and dismembering girls, you know. But it's like, oh, it's been boring. I've just been eating pizza and watching the telly. Just unbelievable how somebody could compartmentalize like that, isn't it? It's really terrifying.
showed Rex Heuermann murdered the women. The table showed results on testing of hairs found on 5 of the women. Rex Heuermann's hair was found on Sandra Costilla, Megan Waterman, and Jessica Taylor. Hairs that belonged to Heuermann's wife and daughter were found on Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. And a hair Heuermann was later charged with the murder of Valerie Mack, who prosecutors said they linked Heuermann to, again, through DNA testing of hairs found on her body. And I want to be clear, just in case you were wondering, the DA has said inexplicably he does not believe that Heuermann's wife, daughter, or his former. Ray Tierney has said Heuermann's family was out of town when these homicides were committed at the family's home. In the middle of this investigation, DNA testing identified another victim. Karen Vergata disappeared on Valentine's Day in 1996. She was just 34 years old. For years, she was known only as Fire Island Jane Doe. Her legs were found there in April of 1996. And in 2011, her skull was found on Tobay Beach in Nassau County. Rex Heuermann wasn't charged with the murder of Karen Vergata, but he was certainly a suspect after his arrest. Along with the DNA evidence that DA Tierney said linked Heuermann to the murders, he said there was other evidence, a witness description, digital evidence, and a collection of magazines and news stories in Heuermann's home about the murders. Prosecutors wrote in a bail document in 2024 that violent pornography was recovered from Heuermann's electronic devices and that it depicted bondage, torture, and death. And they said they recovered a once deleted planning document that had been on Heuermann's computer from 2002 through 2004. One document has categories labeled problems, supplies, DS, and TRG. Yeah. Investigators believe DS means dump sites and TRG means target. Under problems. And
so, yeah, this is his to-do list things. Problems, DNA, tire marks, bloodstains, fingerprints. MO. Is that modus operandi? What is that? Anyway, plastic bag and cat litter, because that's what they put in. Cat litter apparently soaks up bodily fluids when bodies decompose. Trace source of supplies, foot shoe prints, photos, police stop. These are possible problems. And then he's got his supplies, booties. So he will have put those. He will have put those sort of not plastic, are they? The material booty things that forensic scientists put on, so that you don't get so it doesn't leave a footprint. Police scanner, rope, cord, saw, cutting tools, hair nets, photo, film, burn can, foam drain cleaner, body wash, wipes, tarps, drop clothes, medical gloves, bags, tape. So he's got these lists of what he needs. It's chilling, isn't it? Really.
Number of items are listed, including DNA, tire marks, bloodstains, fingerprints, witness, trace sources of supplies, shoe prints, police stop, and the list goes on. The supply list also sounds like things that could be used to torture a person or clean up or keep clean. Booties, lye/acid, police scanner, rope/cord, saw cutting, medical glove.
So, yeah, next time recon dumpster locations. So he's probably disposed of things in different dumpsters. Supplies, booties, lime, acid, police scanner, rope, cord, saw, cutting tools, tarps, drop clothes, medical gloves, bags, tape, large electric clips. Oh, God, what did he want large electric clips for? Cargo strap. Then dump sites. There's a couple of dump sites there. Dumpster, recon, next time recon dumpster locations. Now, I'm not sure what TRG means, but he's got Megan, who was one of his victims, was called Megan. Small is good. Small is good. And small would be good because they would be easier to control.
Drain cleaner, photo film, and under DS-1 Mill Road, dumpster site, next time recon dumpster locations. Under TRG, T1 names Megan with a question mark. Does that mean Megan Waterman? We don't know. She was killed years after this document was believed to have been created. The document also states small is good. The Gilgo Four were all small in stature. Another document discussed pre-prep, prep, and post-event. The pre-prep included a vehicle inspection, reconnaissance, and looking up weather reports. And the prep listed a holding area, build table, crossbar, and hard point. The bail documents says a hard...
I mean, that, when he says that, prep, set up stage, holding area, build table, crossbar, hard point. They're all ways of torturing somebody, aren't they? Pre-prep, vehicle inspection, engage T1, recon DS1, locate DS2, dump site 2, yeah. Weather report, video cams. And so he's got pre-prep, then prep, then post-event, destroy file. So he I wonder if he recorded these things, but then he's destroyed them. He can't spell either, I've noticed that. Change tires. He's forensically aware enough to change the tires on his car, because the tires, in the treads on the tires, they tell a story, don't they? Burn gloves, dispose of pics. Oh, bless. These poor women have story set. So he will have planned what he was going to tell his wife, afterwards, what he'd been doing. But that is chilling, that, I think, dispose of pics. They'll have taken pictures. They always want mementos, don't they? But he's, I suppose, if you like, clever enough, for want of a better word, to dispose of those pictures.
Post-event, the pre-prep included a vehicle inspection, reconnaissance, and looking up weather reports. And the prep listed a holding area, build table, crossbar, and hard point. The bail document says a hard point in bondage is a fixed attachment point in the ceiling that supports the weight of a person being suspended off the ground. Rex Heuermann fought to have the DNA evidence in the case suppressed as he maintained his innocence, but he lost that battle. The DNA evidence was coming in at his trial, which had been scheduled to begin in September of this year.
Coming out, Judge.
But today, an about face, as Heuermann changed his plea.
On the record with number 8, Rex Heuermann.
We're going to do the waivers first. Okay?
For the defendant, Michael Brown.
So yeah, originally he pled not guilty, and the lawyer was trying to get the DNA evidence thrown out of court. I mean, how he thought he was going to do that, I don't know. Anyway, when that couldn't happen, then obviously he's advised Rex to plead guilty because the DNA evidence would not be thrown out. And Lily, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I never thought that. TRG, target. And he said Megan, but Megan wasn't killed till long after that. I mean, was he already targeting her? Maybe. I mean, I don't, did he scroll through escort sites, and maybe he'd had his eye on Megan for a while. And it's interesting, isn't it, how times changed as far as, the internet has changed a lot of things, hasn't it? But also escorts and things. There was a time when working girls would have to just hang around on the street and pick up. And that's the only way they could, isn't it? Because you couldn't really do it any other way. Now, of course, they don't need to do that. They can just put an advert out on Craigslist or somewhere like that. I think Craigslist might have gone by now, but then there was Craigslist. He met a lot of his escorts he found on Craigslist. And although it's sort of safer than just hanging around the street and waiting to be picked up, I suppose, it's still that profession, sex work. At some point, you've got to be on your own with that person somewhere, either at their home or at a hotel or wherever. And so it's, you're so vulnerable. And the thing is, he could plan it all completely, couldn't he? So as soon as he knew his wife was going away, he'd get it all ready, like with his list. And then he would find an escort, maybe one he'd found before. Maybe he had found the girls before, and then when he had to wait until he knew his wife was going away before he could actually get them round.
It is the understanding of the District Attorney's Office that the defendant will plead guilty to 7 counts in the indictment, specifically counts 1 through 3 and counts 7 through 10. Counts 4 through 6 will be dismissed in satisfaction at the time of the defendant's sentencing. In addition to allocuting to and admitting his factual guilt to all elements of counts 1 through 3 and 7 through 10 of the indictment, the defendant further agrees that although he has not been charged with this crime, he will admit as part of his plea that he intentionally caused the death of Karen Brigada and transported and left her remains in Suffolk County in 1996. The District Attorney's Office agrees that in exchange for the defendant pleading guilty to counts 1 through 3 and counts 7 through 10 of the indictment and admitting to the uncharged murder of Karen Brigada, the District Attorney's Office recommends the following sentence. Counts 1 through 3, murder in the first degree, the maximum sentence of life imprisonment without parole to run consecutive to each other. Count 7 through 10, the maximum sentence of 25 years for life imprisonment to run consecutive to one another, and with the sentences on counts 1 through 3. To summarize the foregoing sentence, the defendant agrees to serve 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole regarding counts 1 through 3, followed by 4 consecutive sentences of 25 years imprisonment to life to run consecutive to one another. Should the defendant allocute to the murder of Karen Brigada, the defendant's guilty plea and this plea agreement will satisfy and cover the uncharged homicide of Karen Brigada. In exchange for all of the above pleas, there will be no further prosecutions pertaining to the murders of the aforementioned 8 victims: Karen Brigada, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The defendant will acknowledge both orally and in writing that he has received voluminous and sufficient discovery to make an informed decision regarding his plea here today. The defendant will further waive any objections to the district attorney's compliance with Article 245 of the Criminal Procedure Law. The defendant has also agreed to withdraw all motions currently pending before this court. As set forth in the written waiver of right to appeal, the defendant agrees to waive his right to appeal, which includes the court's prior hearing determination, as well as any claim that the sentence imposed by this court is excessive. The defendant further acknowledges that he has been fully apprised by his attorneys of the rights and privileges that he is waiving, and that his waiver is being agreed to knowingly and voluntarily and made for the purpose of receiving the benefit of not being charged with the murder of Karen Vergata or any other charges related to the deaths of Maureen Brady Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, and Sandra Castilla.
Then the time came for Rex Heuermann, the now admitted Gilgo Beach serial killer, to answer the judge's questions.
Mr. Brown? Judge, can he be uncuffed for a moment just to sign certain documents? Sarge?
Yes,
Thank
Judge.
you. All right, Rex, we'll sign this. I'm going to sign right here, please.
Mr. Heuermann, before I swear you in, the elocution is taken. I have some questions to ask of you. They're obvious and simple questions, but I have to ask them, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
How old are you?
62.
Do you read and write English?
Yes.
Have you discussed this case with your attorney?
Yes, I have.
Have you had enough time to discuss this case with your attorney?
Yes, I have.
After discussions with your lawyer, you feel it's in your best interest to plead guilty rather than go to trial.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you satisfied with the manner in which your attorneys represented you in this case?
Yes, I am.
I must say that the attorneys on both sides of this case have been excellent, unbelievable lawyers. Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a charge, that is the same as if you had gone to trial and been found guilty of that charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're waiving a number of very important rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, now these rights include your right to a trial by jury or by the court, your right to have the prosecution produce evidence and witnesses to prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, your right to cross-examine those witnesses, and your right to testify on your own behalf or to remain silent, your right to call witnesses or submit evidence on your behalf. Do you understand those rights as I've just explained?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up those rights?
Yes, I do.
This next part is incredibly interesting as Michael Brown discusses a condition of this plea.
Now, other than the promise.
Yeah, we were saying, before you came in, Sean, we were talking about that a bit. If you rewind later or whatever, the police chief who was originally in charge of it, he was corrupt and he took the FBI off the case. And I was drawing the parallels with the Nancy Guthrie case. We've got a police chief who doesn't want the FBI to help out in the Nancy Guthrie case. And it reminded me of this case. And it turned out that the police chief here, he was completely corrupt, wasn't he? He served some time in prison, but I think he's out now.
That was placed on the record by the people. Has anyone, myself, your lawyer, the prosecutor, or anyone else, made any promises to you in return for your plea of guilty?
The only thing I want to interject, Judge, Mr. Tierney has indicated in exchange for the pleas that we're going to enter into this morning, there'll be no further prosecutions on the 8 victims that he's referenced. My client is also obligated to completely, truthfully, and fairly cooperate with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Analysis Unit as part of what we just discussed,
Any other promises made to you?
other than what I've just said. No.
Are you pleading guilty voluntarily of your own free will?
Yes.
All right, we're going to swear in the defendant now.
The remaining portion of the hearing, where Rex Heuermann allocated and answered specific questions about the crimes, was not allowed to be recorded. So Rex Heuermann, as part of his guilty plea, has promised that he will cooperate with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. That unit has studied serial killers for decades to find out how they become the murderers that they are. In the hope
God, I'd love to be a witness to those interviews. It's weird, isn't it? Serial killers, of course, they're awful people, but there is something so intriguing about. I think we all want to know how they tick, or I do anyway. You want to know why, because we always want to know why. It's human curiosity. Why do that? Why? Where did it start? When did you first think about killing someone? Because every serial killer has a first time. There's always a first kill, and like it or not, it is intriguing to know why. I don't understand why we're interested in it. I don't understand why I'm interested in it. But I am. It's almost like a self-protection. It's as if you could understand it, you could stop it happening to you.
Hope of learning more about them to possibly prevent future crimes and catch serial killers more quickly in the future. After the hearing, Rex Heuermann's wife, Asa Ellerup, spoke briefly. She had supported her husband after his arrest.
My thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Their loss is immeasurable, and the focus should be on them at this time and moment. I ask that you give some privacy to my family as they navigate through this very difficult time.
And Rex Heuermann.
It is difficult. And the daughter there, her face, oh my God, that daughter. I mean, the son isn't there. He's sort of her son. Rex's sort of adopted son. He's got learning difficulties. He's not there, I noticed. But her daughter is there, and that is Rex's daughter. Just absolutely blasted with how she's coping with this. I don't know. So they are secondary victims. They are.
Heuermann's lawyer explained why his client decided to plead guilty.
I can't give you our conversations that are confidential, but I will say to you that there came a point in this defense where Rex said, I want to plead guilty. I'll say this, certainly several of his concerns, he had many, about why he didn't want to go to trial and plead guilty. He certainly wanted to save the families of the victims the ordeal of going to trial, and coupled with saving his family that ordeal. So I know that there.
I don't believe he wanted to save the families of the victims, that ordeal, because let's not forget, while after he'd murdered these girls, a couple of these girls that he'd murdered, he took the phone numbers, or he had their phones, didn't he? And he phoned up their relatives and talked about the murder, anonymously. He used, he's not interested in the families of his victims. He's interested in his family, saving his family pain. But if he was truly interested in the family of his victims, he wouldn't have been ringing up their sister and saying, oh, your sister was a whore and this, that and the other, and I murdered her and blah, blah, blah. So that's a load of rubbish. I'm sure this guy, this defense lawyer, is a very nice guy, and I know that everyone's got to have a defense, but I just don't know how they stick up for these people. I just don't know how they do it.
There was conversations during the course of this defense between his family members and himself in regards to that, yeah.
So now I want to turn to somebody who's covered the Gilgo Beach serial killer case for 16 years. She's covered it inside and out. She's law and crimes investigative reporter, Kristen Thorne. Kristen, I know you're right outside the courthouse there in Suffolk County. I want to first get your reaction to Rex Heuermann changing his guilty plea after he said for so long, I didn't do this.
And Jeanette, I think it's not entirely surprising. The trial was going to come up in September. And so, the walls were closing in on Rex Heuermann. His attorney had been pushing to get the DNA thrown out. There were hairs that were found on various of these victims that were essentially linked to Rex Heuermann. And his defense attorney, try as he may, was unable to get that thrown out. And I think that was sort of, one of the nails in the coffin, that they just knew, Rex Heuermann knew there was no way around this. But really, Anjanette, a surprise today, because we knew about the 7 murders that he had been charged with. And then today, in this plea deal, he pled guilty to killing another woman, an 8th woman. Now, he's not being charged in that. That's where it gets a little nuanced with the law. But he did admit that he killed Karen Vergata. She was someone that had already been, we thought, was part of this pattern. And now today, Rex Heuermann confirmed that he strangled the district attorney, Ray Tierney, went down each individual woman's name and said, "How did you kill her?" And every time he said strangulation. And then he admitted that he dumped the bodies in various places and dismembered some of the bodies.
And it did seem, Kristen, that over the years, he changed his MO. He was dismembering some of those victims, the victims that were killed in the early 90s. Sandra Castilla, she was not dismembered, but Karen Vergata, as you said, was, as was Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack was too. But then he changed his MO. Was there any discussion about that in court, or was this more just straightforward, I did this, I did that?
Yeah, Antoinette, very clinical, as they will say about today. Very much, here is what you're accused of. Do you understand it? Yes, I do. And the way he acknowledged, Antoinette, what he, each of these questions, I equate it to if someone was ordering food at a restaurant and a server said to you, "Is this what you wanted to order?" And you would respond, "Yes, that's what I ordered." It was that emotionless. It was just very matter of fact. So you talk about the pattern. Sandra Castilla, as you mentioned, was a brutal murder, but she was not dismembered, but she was left her body in a way that was very
very matter of fact. And they always are, aren't they, these killers? It's like it's nothing to them. And I just remember reading once somebody talking about serial killers and saying, literally, a victim is just like when you take a tissue to blow your nose, because you need it in that moment. Take the tissue, you blow your nose, and you throw it in the bin. And that's how serial killers look on their victims. They mean nothing to them. Once they accept what they need them for, the gratification, and then once they finish with them, just mean nothing. They're not people to them. They're not people, not like their own family, their own children, their own mum, their own wife, or whatever. They're literally just like a tissue that you take out of the tissue box, you blow your nose on it, you throw it in the bin. That's it. You just can't get your head around it, can you?
Very disturbing. She had clothes that were hung around her body and all sorts of things. And then we have the dismembering of the 3 next victims, including decapitation. And then we get to the Gilgo 4. So these are the 4 sex workers that were found in December 2010. It was at that moment when police realized they had a serial killer on their hand, and they said as such to the public. So while the previous body parts had been found, it wasn't until the Gilgo 4 that anybody, the media, the public, the police, had any idea that these were all connected. And then once they started looking at the Gilgo 4 around that area of Gilgo Beach, which is on the south shore of Long Island, they started to find these other remains.
Yeah, the Sandra Castilla case, all of these are brutal, awful killings, but that one is particularly awful. We talked earlier in the podcast about how she was mutilated, and it's just a really disturbing, awful case. There was also a lot of electronic evidence. We talked about the DNA evidence here, the hairs that linked Rex Heuermann to these homicides, but also there was electronic evidence. His cell phone linked him to these crimes, but also there was a lot of evidence that the prosecutors said they were able to retrieve and uncover that showed his meticulous planning when it came to these crimes. And I think that adds such a layer of complexity to this. And it shows you how he studied this over a number of years. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, prosecutors revealed today that they had given over to the defense 120 terabytes of evidence and 7,015 pages of evidence. So just an incredible amount of evidence, so much so that Rex Heuermann's attorney Mike Brown said as such in his press conference after the hearing, saying that the prosecution did an amazing job. I mean, you know that you're up to an uphill battle when a defense attorney is acknowledging how good of a job the prosecution did. So let's talk about the burner phones. I'm glad you brought that up, because the Gilgo 4, the only specifics, the details that we heard out of Rex Heuermann today actually had to do with 3 of the Gilgo 4. That would be, it was not Maureen Brainerd Barnes, but it involved Sandra Castilla, not Sandra Castilla, but 3 of the 4 Gilgo victims. And he acknowledged today, Rex Heuermann, that he used a burner phone to lure these women with promises of money because they were working as sex workers, and that he killed them and wrapped them in burlap along their head, the middle of their torso.
It's awful, you know, they say money, well, the Bible says money is the root of all evil, and it is, you know, there's various reasons why these women were doing the work they were doing. Some of it was because of addiction. Sometimes it was just putting food on the table for their children. You know, there's many reasons why people go into sex work. And, you know, sometimes it is easy money, I suppose. If you're going to put up with those risks, God, you know, I just think as soon as I just can't, you know, as soon as someone like Rex, you know, you turned up at to a John or whatever they call him, and it was Rex, and he's massive, and he's got that evil look in his eye, and how, you know, I don't know, it's got to be desperation that makes you do it. Surely nobody would do that voluntarily. You know, look, I mean, just imagine this face looking at you, and he's massive, great big guy. And that's the last sight that you see, and then he's doing these terrible things, torturing them. You know, they didn't have quick deaths, these women. He took photos. He said dispose of pics, because he had pics. Took photos, probably took videos. Yeah, them poor women, but he disposed of them. Hopefully, you know, I don't know if the police managed to recover any or whatever, but yeah, it's very sad. So sad that women feel like any woman or man, because, you know, sex work's not exclusive to women, is it? In fact, one of the victims that were found, you know, is thought to have been a transsexual man. And it just makes you wonder, they died in a different way to the other girls. Just makes you wonder if Rex picked up an escort, turned out it was a man, and he just lost it completely because that person died of blunt force trauma. But he hasn't admitted to that murder. But it seems strange that the body was right there next to them, buried in the same way. Anyway, maybe that's what will come out in his interviews with the FBI.
And as well as their legs. And that was the only real acknowledgement of specifics that we got out of Rex Heuermann today. In terms of other evidence, yes, Anjanette, and we've known about this for quite some time, prosecutors went through all of his devices, and he had tried to delete a lot of these searches, but we know that they can always find these things. And so they found, in addition to violent porn, they also found it's almost like checklists of how he was going to go about committing these murders, and a to-do list, if you will, that he needed to get certain supplies. Next time, make sure to hit her harder in the head. Really, really disturbing things that actually matched with what prosecutors believe happened to these victims. And so they uncovered a massive amount of digital evidence in this case as well. I think that obviously no one, we're not in his head, but I will tell you this. Mike Brown said that today for Rex Heuermann, it was a relief that he had been carrying the weight of what he had done for all of these years, not just the time that he'd been caught, but certainly over the last 3 years. Remember, he has been in virtual solitary.
oh, bless, oh my God, my heart's breaking for him. Now, do you know, a relief, yeah, well, won't be a relief when he goes, he will enjoy talking to the FBI. You know, at the end of the day, that's probably the only interesting thing that's going to happen to him now for the rest of his life. But he will enjoy it. But the thing is, it's a trade-off, isn't it? The FBI will get something out of Rex by trying to get some insight into serial killers. And yeah, Rex will get something out of it because he'll relive probably, if he can, you know, go through the things he's done. That be the, as I say, the only pleasure that he'll get. So I don't feel any sympathy for him at all, obviously. When it's, oh, it'd be a relief for him. You know, I know that the defense lawyer, that's his job to defend him, but for God's sake, how does he even do it? But yeah, quite often, as I've said before, these serial killers, quite often they keep it to themselves so much, you know, because that you can't, you know, normally if you've got a hobby, you can go and chat to someone about it, say, oh, you know, what's your hobby? Oh, I like knitting. Oh, I knitted this lovely jumper for my granddaughter or whatever. Or, you know, oh yeah, I go and play football on a Saturday, or a walking football team, or blah, and you can talk about it. You talk about the things you're passionate about. Rex Heuermann was passionate, and other serial killers, they're passionate about killing people. They can't talk about that to anyone. So quite often when they do finally get caught, you can't shut them up. I mean, Ed Kemper was the same, Ted Bundy, BTK, Jeffrey Dahmer. They go from, you know, obviously they've lived this secret life for so long where they've never been able to tell anybody what they like doing at the weekends. And then suddenly they're telling everybody everything. And in fact, I think Ed Kemper, he was talking so much about it that in the end, the police didn't even want to know anymore. Because it was just like, oh my God, it's going on and on. You know, it literally went, they keep it all bottled up inside them. And then when the cork's out of the bottle, you can't shut them up about it. Anyway, the only good thing about it, of course, is hopefully it will give the FBI insights into catching serial killers more quickly in the future. That's the whole point of it, trying to understand. You never stop them. I don't think there's any redemption, both for PDFs and serial killers. I don't think they'll ever change. You could, you know, there was a school of thought in around about the 80s that it was thought that, you know, these killers and PDFs and things could be changed with the right counselling and blah-de-blah-de-bloody-blah-de-bar. But I think really that's been more or less poo-pooed now. You know, they let people out and you feel, oh yeah, they won't do it again. They will do it again. There are some things cannot be cured. It's not like, you know, getting arrested for shoplifting at 16 or even drug dealing or even being a drug addict or a drug dealer. You can turn your life around from those kind of things. But you know, when you actually do these things that serial killers do, or the same with PDFs, you know, child lovers, I don't think they can ever be changed. It's something wired wrong inside them. And I don't believe it's because of their background or their upbringing or any of that. Some of them have the most fantastic upbringings. They can go on trying to blame it on single parents, or it's all the mother's fault, or it's the father's fault, or it's everybody's fault except theirs. It's their fault. They've got something wrong with them inside, and it's never going to change. They need to be locked up and never let out. It's a shame, but that's just the way it is. You know, who knows why? They'd be better off sort of concentrating more on that, just, you know, never mind the why and let them out later, but just the why in the sense of try and stop, you know, well, you're never going to stop people doing it. There'll always be someone who'll do it, but get them caught more quickly. You can only use it to that advantage. They'll never be cured, and there'll always be new ones coming up, and it's not about their upbringing. There's so many people have terrible upbringings. They don't do these kind of things. So I'm sick of it being blamed on, you know, all sorts of things. These people have got something wrong inside. Nobody, no matter what terrible upbringing you've had, if you come from a broken home or if you're abused or whatever, how many people does that happen to? They don't go and murder people, or attack children. There's something wrong with these people and they should never be released.
Harry confinement for the last 3 years. He's in a cell 23 hours a day. And so he is now left. And now he's facing 7 life sentences. He'll be sentenced June 17th. Oh, by the way, Mike Brown does expect that Rex Heuermann will make a statement during his sentencing. And so in many ways, maybe one of the reasons why we saw...
That's interesting, isn't it? So it's thought that he probably will make a statement during sentencing. Now, what I think he's going to say? He's going to apologise to the victim's family, which means nothing. Think about Rex Heuermann. He wants to appear like a decent guy, a good old guy. Do you know what I mean? He's not really this terrible, evil person. That's what he'll probably do in his statement. Apologise to the families. It'll mean nothing. The families will get a chance for their victim impact statements. That will be good to hear. And I'm glad they're getting that opportunity.
Saw today this very, I don't want to say cavalier, it was just very matter of fact. Like, yes, this is what I ordered, this, and he answered directly to Tierney. And he didn't have to do that because Mike Brown is following along. They had this all prepared, what exactly Ray Tierney was going to say to Rex Heuermann. And so you could see Mike Brown following along on this page. And Mike Brown never looked up, but Rex Heuermann, when it was time for him to acknowledge, he would look right at Ray Tierney and say, yes, I do. That's what I did. And so maybe part of the reason that he today, came off as this sort of nonchalant is because he has been thinking about this, at least Mike Brown says, that over the last several weeks, he has been preparing for this day.
Well, I hope that these families, if they wish, during the sentencing, I think maybe we'll hear from some of them at that time in June, because that will give them the opportunity to address the court and to address the man who took the lives of their loved ones. And that's when we may hear from them, since today was more of a clinical exercise, kind of a formality. And as you mentioned, just very much like, here's what I did. Yes, I did it, that type of thing. Kristen Thorne, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Antoinette.
Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, who spearheaded the creation of the Gilgo Beach Task Force, spoke after Heuermann changed his plea. He was surrounded by some of the victims' family members.
This defendant walked among us, play acting as a normal suburban dad, when in reality, all along, he was obsessively targeting innocent women for death. He identified these women, lured them into Nassau County, murdered them, and left their bodies in Suffolk County. He thought that by killing them, he could silence them forever and get away with murder. But he was wrong, because it was these victims, these women, who refused to stay silent. First, that silence was broken by the victims' families, who advocated for their loved ones and agitated for justice.
To every family out there still searching, still waiting, still holding on, please do not give up hope. Even when it feels impossible, even when the years pass and the silence grow heavy, keep going. Your loved ones matter. They are not.
I mean, that's brilliant what she's saying there. This is one of the family members, isn't it? Yeah, how many times must they have given up hope over the years? That there would ever be, well, first of all, that their loved one would even be ever found after she went missing, and the case was completely cocked up, wasn't it? Nobody was listening to them because they were SEX workers, and then the bodies were actually found, and then the case was cocked up. They've been through so much, this family, over years, so it's lovely, not only this family, but the families of all the victims. It's lovely that they're saying that, don't give up. And this again reminded me of the Nancy Guthrie case. It's only been, well, I say only, I mean, it's been just over 2 months. This family have waited these families have waited years for this day, and they've got one more day to come, which is when they give their victim's impact statement, when he gets sentenced in June. And then, you know, they've still got a life sentence. I'm not saying, you know, it's over then, but there's a relief, at least, you know, that he's pled guilty and there's justice for their loved one. But it's nice that she's coming out and saying this, you know, to try and recover from this kind of trauma in your life. I was watching another podcast and it was saying the best way to do it is to talk to other people who've been through the same thing, just like with anything, I suppose. You know, how they coped, because people do cope. You know, the resilience of the human spirit, you think you could never cope. You know, when you look at missing persons cases, you think, God, how are these people even getting up in the morning and going around their, you know, going through their normal life, you know, how are they doing it? But they do it. People do it, and they carry on. And so, you know, if you can take something, if somebody else is in this position, can take something from the advice given by people who do know exactly what you're going through. They don't, you know, like I always think, oh, I can imagine what they're going through, or I feel for them, but I don't know what they're going through because I've fortunately never been in that exact same position. But if you talk to people who have, you know, surely that's going to help. So I hope these families can come together and help each other.
Not forgotten, and one day answers can come.
Oh.
Finally, to Maureen, the promise I made to you so long ago was simple.
Oh.
Sorry. I would never stop searching for justice for you. Through every year, every setback, every unanswered question, I carried you with me, and I kept that promise. And today, it has been done. Justice has finally found its way to you. Your voice was never silenced, your story never forgotten, and your life will always be more than the tragedy that took you. This moment is not the end, but a reminder that love endures, truth prevails, and hope never fades, because even in the darkest moments, justice will find its way.
Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach serial killer, will be formally sentenced in June. Law and Crime will have that hearing covered for you. And that's it for this.
Yep, and we'll be watching it. I will be playing that, and that lady there that spoke, so brave what she's saying, and also important to remember, you can't. These women, they'll always be remembered as the victims of the Gilgo Beach serial killer, of course, but they can't be just defined by that. You know, they were people as well. They were some of them, they were daughters, they were sisters, some of them were mothers. So they're more than just a victim of Rex Heuermann. You know, they're more, can't just be defined by that. They've got to be defined by the life that they led, as short as it was. And, you know, everybody's life matters, doesn't it? Everybody's life matters. So there's some positive things. I think nowadays, I think SEX workers are treated differently. They are treated with more respect when they go missing or if anything happens to them. You know, so I think we have come on as a society from that. Same with other cases like in the UK with the Yorkshire Ripper, etc. You know, how, you know, that was sort of treated as, oh, well, you know, they live in a high-risk lifestyle. They almost deserve what they get. I don't think we think like that nowadays. I hope we don't anyway, because these are people. It doesn't matter, you know, or if you're a nurse or if you're a teacher or whoever you are, your life matters, and it matters that you may have gone down the wrong road somewhere for whatever reason. Sometimes it's just as simple as trying to feed your family. So I think that is an improvement in society. It's not all bad. And also the things that have improved, you know, that we do catch serial killers more quickly. Didn't happen with Rex, of course, for various reasons. He got away with it for years. I mean, he's had 62 years of a free life. He's 62 years old. He's had 62 years of a free life. He'll never have a free life again. But, you know, at the end of the day, he's not getting the death penalty either. But hopefully, you know, the FBI can glean something from all of this horrible, you know, he's going to get a buzz out of it, talking about his victims and that, and know that. But it's a trade-off. Hopefully FBI something, and society as a whole will get something out of it. Let's hope so. Anyway, so yeah, we're, as far as this case is concerned, we'll talk about it again when he gets. And yeah, now I went through all this at the beginning of this video, but I'll just do it again. Look after you. You are the most important person. Look after yourself. Get a massage, get a pedicure, get a manicure, or you know, go out for a drink with your mates, or you know, whatever. Just try and do something for yourself today, because really, you know, other people might be depending on you. Okay, I'll see you really soon in the next video. Thank you for. Don't forget to leave your fingerprint on the like button. Don't forget to leave your DNA on the subscribe button, and also on the notifications bell. Thank you for caring about these victims. I'll see you really soon in the next video. Till then, may your God go with you. Bye.